I think it's super important that peace officers be aware of their rights and changes in the law and all of those things. To see the difference of what it takes to put on a case versus to defend a case was super interesting to me.
In the world of police discipline, there's a crucial need for advocates who are not only tenacious, but also dedicated to defending law enforcement officers with unwavering commitment. As sworn peace officers, having an attorney who knows the ins and outs of the discipline system is paramount. And let me tell you, in LAPD, navigating, negotiating, and representing sworn officers demands a level of dedication that goes above and beyond to ensure fairness and justice prevail within internal affairs. Enter Nicole Castronovo, the epitome of the police attorney every sworn officer wants to have by their side. With personal experience and a profound understanding of the complexities involved, Nicole is here to shed light of the world of police misconduct, criminal allegations, and the myriad of challenges faced by today's law enforcement professionals. Get ready for riveting discussions and insightful conversations as we dive into the heart of policing with Nicole. So without further ado, let's break bread. Welcome to Internal Affairs, a police podcast. Let's go. Okay, here we are with, I already named you a heavy hitter, Nicole Castronovo, or actually, I'm just joking around. It's Castronovo. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Before we start, of course, I got to give shout outs to my sponsors that are so important to the show. First and foremost, Savage Training Group. Look, no death by PowerPoint, no check in the box, fully engagement in all of our classes. I happen to be a law enforcement instructor for Scott Savage, so definitely check them out in the future for some really good classes related to any law enforcement topic. Then we have the Titan Group, professional investigations. Again, complex investigations, whether they're going to be internal affairs as it relates to police, fire, complex workplace investigations, and other sorts of investigations. You got to check out the Titan Group. The Code 4, we got coins, as you can see. They do patches, coins, insignias, you name it. They're real good at what they do. And definitely go check out Code 4 products. And last but not least, who doesn't like coffee, right? Code 7 coffee. Look, there's probably not one officer that I know of in my 20-plus year career that doesn't drink coffee. I mean,
or lawyer.
Or lawyer, or when I was in the Navy, we drank so much coffee. You got to get some coffee at Code 7 Coffee. Look, all of their websites are on the YouTube channel. Please go check them out. And without further ado, Nicole, finally, we get to talk some really good stuff. We're going to talk shop.
Yeah.
And I suppose we can start by saying that it's pretty unique what you do. Not many lawyers really get into this type of work. Everybody says, "Oh my God, I'm going to be a PI lawyer," or corporate lawyer. My brother practices PI, and he does a little bit of criminal defense, so on and so forth. But you happen to do this at a full-time basis, along with some criminal defense for police officers. And I'm just going to start out by saying thank you for what you do. And, let's get right to it.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, rate the importance of internal affairs in a police department and why.
Ooh, I'll give it a 10 because I do think it is really important to have accountability and integrity and to keep that public trust within an agency. But I also think the internal affairs is super important to the police officer's career. And so I think it's important that internal affairs is squared away because of the impact it can have, both positive and negative, on a peace officer's career.
Now, do you think it's like 10 plus if it's like a smaller agency? Because I know you've represented officers in smaller agencies. Look, you and I, you work, a lot of your clients are from the LAPD. I'm an ex-LAPD alum. It's a huge machine, and I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about the police disciplinary system as it relates to LAPD, but what about these small agencies? I would imagine it's probably a little bit more important because, I mean, how do you get them to know what an IA looks like or, what you're supposed to do?
True. And even some of the smaller agencies actually farm out their IAs to outside investigators as well if they can't basically accommodate a full-size or a full-time IA. Or sometimes they might just borrow a sergeant here and borrow a sergeant there to use them for an investigation. And that can be tough. If someone doesn't understand the rules like POBAR and doesn't understand Skelly, that can be very tricky.
Yeah, no, totally. It's a 10. I know we're a little bit biased because this is what we do for a living, if you will. Okay, look, got to ask you this instead. What is the one thing that you think all IA investigators should know or do? Like if you were to be in front of a whole bunch of sergeants that are getting ready to go into internal affairs, what would you tell them it's so important to do?
What I think is super important to do, it comes from legal standards for just cause, is it's fact-finding, not headhunting. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the mix, which is you're supposed to remain neutral, right? You're fact-finding. But I think sometimes investigators can become biased, whether it's for the officer or against the officer, and they're not fact-finding at that point, especially if they're headhunting, especially if they're trying to get somebody.
Yeah. So here you are as an IA, you're like, oh, I know Marlon. And you know what? They have this pre-notion, I suppose a bias is saying, yeah, I can see him doing that. So there's an expectation. Is that
Yes.
something?
So keeping an open mind throughout the investigative process, no different than if you were investigating a crime.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. Have you seen where that's been difficult to do?
Yes, I have seen that, especially you're talking about with smaller agencies because there's more baggage there sometimes between interpersonal relationships, right? Where everybody knows everybody, it's more intimate. Whereas, like you said, LAPD is a huge machine. I mean, even still, people know the reputation of other people, but it's not the same as being at, a 100-person agency.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
Rumors start. And now all of a sudden, oh my God, we can't talk to them.
Yes.
Because they committed this like heinous, felonious crime.
Yes, you become a social pariah, exactly. And everybody knows the business that's going on, and everybody knows the chisme, and...
Yeah. I try so hard when I teach at a Savage Training Group to tell, because the audience is normally sergeants that are getting ready to go into internal affairs, some that are seasoned, that were voluntold. Right. Yeah, you're going to internal affairs. You're like, this is not what I want to do. Some lieutenants and maybe some command staff are in the class, and I always mention the fact that, tried very, very hard to just be completely neutral, two, impartial, obviously, but more than anything, kind of walk them through the process. Mm-hmm. And what I've realized is that even your best of friends, right? You guys could have been in the academy together. Wives know each other. You're in each other's weddings. Guys are just the best of friends. But the minute you make sergeant, and next thing you know, you get a complaint of your bestie, you just completely separate yourself. And I suppose that's what we have these conversations and these platforms, so that maybe we can change that stigma.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's understanding me. Okay, so. Meant to ask you, you've been doing this, and we're going to go trip down memory lane. You've been doing this for quite some time, right?
Yes.
5+, 6, 7 years, something like that?
Going on 7 years now.
7 years. Did you ever wonder why there is that negative stigma with internal affairs?
No. I've never wondered because I've seen some naughty things that internal affairs has done over the years. So, and depending on the agency too, some internal affairs, they really are out to get their people. Sometimes you have a chief who's a hanging chief, mm-hmm. and the IA is just given their marching orders to go get them. And so I totally understand why there is that stigma, and also it's the unknown too. There's quite a amount of mystery. There's so few people that actually work in internal affairs, uh-huh. So I think that mystery helps kind of with the stigma, foster a stigma.
Yeah. It's been around for decades, and I've always wondered why we're called the Rat Squad, and the dark side, and you're a desk jockey, or all these different nicknames, and I suppose it's carried on through decades, only to find out that it's not what you really think it is, which is, several reasons why, we decided to do this, because it's so important, and maybe perhaps in the future we can kind of get away from that negative stigma. But you're right, spot on when you say that there is some chiefs that, what, our command staff will say, we're no matter what you do, this is the one. This is the case where we're going to get rid of them, and that's very, very unfortunate. Okay, let's get to know you.
Okay.
Trip down memory lane. Let's see. Here's what I got. I got to put on my glasses because that's what happens when you get a little older.
I like those glasses.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Kwai, if you ever get a chance.
Those are my sunglasses.
There you go. It's an Australian company. If you're promoting them.
I thought it was Quay. Have I been saying it wrong this whole time?
No, I think you're probably right. And my Peruvian Spanish kicks in because English is my second language, and I probably said it wrong.
En español, por favor.
De repente es Kwai. Kwai or Quay. Puede ser, no sé. We'll see. 2005 to 2012, you were a paralegal.
I was.
What were you doing as a paralegal, if you don't mind me asking?
All sorts of fun stuff. So as a paralegal, that is such a tough job because you are like, I have done everything from get dry cleaning to write a motion, to do legal research, to pick somebody up from the airport. I mean, sometimes part personal assistant, part legal donkey, I mean, that's kind of what it is. You're just a workhorse. And, right. I did wild things because I was a paralegal at a criminal defense firm for 6 years.
That was my next question.
And it was, wow. I got to see a lot of interesting stuff in the early 2000s in a criminal defense firm.
Was any of the clients police at all?
No, they were all civilians.
Okay.
They were all civilians. I think maybe we had 1 or 2 peace officers throughout my time there, but it was a civilian practice.
So for you, the police was like, you just didn't even know this world.
I didn't know this world at all. Like, I totally fell into this after law school.
Yeah, that's where we're next, right? 2013, you went to law school, and congratulations, you graduated in 2017, and that's when you got introduced to the world of peace officers' Bill of Rights.
Yes, and I totally fell into it. I had moved from Orange County to San Francisco, which was a huge culture shock to go from living in Orange County to living in the city in San Francisco. And I was waiting for my bar results. And one of my friends who is a police officer knew I was looking for a job and said, this firm just negotiated our contract. I think you'd really like working with the people there. And I Googled it, and they were hiring for a legal assistant position. And I was like, I'm qualified for that. I'm waiting for my bar results. I've been a paralegal for all this time.
That's right.
So I applied for that, and that's how I started working at a police law firm. And then they kept me on when I passed the bar, and so that's how I started practicing in this area. I just totally fell into it.
Was it, speaking of shock, was it shocking when you were sitting there waiting for your bar results, doing the work?
Oh, it was totally different to go from working with civilians who had been arrested by the police and their feelings about the police to working with the police was very different, was very, very different. Seeing a different side of things, like when I went from being a paralegal in a criminal defense firm, I went and clerked at Orange County District Attorney's Office in law school. And that was the first time I was ever kind of on the law enforcement side of things. And so to see the difference of what it takes to put on a case versus to defend a case was super interesting to me.
Right. And then at some point when you decided to work for this law firm, you were kind of doing both, right? You had the criminal portion of an officer's, I suppose, an incident.
Yes.
And then you got yourself into admin.
Yes.
Was it hard to learn? Or was it a learning curve?
It's a learning curve. And you know what? I will say even just going from agency to agency, there's always a learning curve because you learn how every agency does things just a little bit differently than the other. But yeah, it was quite a learning curve. You've got to learn the culture of police work. You've got to learn the decorum of police work. There's a lot to learn there. It's a whole different world if you're not a police officer to enter it.
How does someone learn peace officers' Bill of Rights? POBAR. I mean, we don't really emphasize a lot on it. Let me ask you this. Number one, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is POBAR?
POBAR is everything. POBAR is everything because it's the only profession that I can think of off the top of my head where your constitutional rights just get stripped of you, besides being in the military too. Your constitutional rights just get stripped from you. And, especially like your Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself, that gets stripped from you when you're compelled to give a statement. Right. And so it's super important that when we're taking away rights, we're giving rights back, like the Peace Officers Bill of Rights.
Super. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're in the process at Savage Training Group to develop this 3-day mandated internal affairs course, and I'm just like challenging myself and just like, okay, this can be so boring to teach. Let's see, 3300 to 3315, right?
Yes.
3303 has A through J. I believe C has like 10 subsections, and we still got to get through to 3315. It is just a heavy load. And even me, when, here I am trying to teach this, there's just a lot of it that I don't even know. And so, how do we get officers to, to say, hey, you know what, I really need to know this stuff?
I think it's super important, and it's unfortunate that a lot of times I find that officers become interested in it after they've been deprived their Peace Officers Bill of Rights. Like, it's a hard way to learn, right? Because when you're denied something, is a really nasty way to learn about the Peace Officers Bill of Rights. So I think it's super important that peace officers be aware of their rights and changes in the law and all of those things and be kept up to speed.
Yeah, and then in addition to all that, there's case law on top of the 3,300 mountain that I just kind of broke down for you, in a sense that somehow, some way, we have to pass the word. So it's important to me. I know it's important to you, and you know what? I'm going to lean on you and ask for your help as I develop. Instead of me lecturing, there's got to be a fun way to engage, because, like I said before, death by PowerPoint and checking the box is just not going to work.
No, giving real life stories about POBAR, I think, is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Real application and real world situations.
Engage, group exercise, get them to teach it back. Yeah, all that good stuff. Yeah, that's super important. Look, 2023, you landed with, I just kind of know him a little bit, Bill Secchi. I have so much to say with such little time, but tell me how you got to meet Bill Secchi. And for all of those that don't know Bill Secchi, you will get to know him. He's actually going to appear on the show here. We're going to do an episode with him, or again, it's going to be another great conversation. I can tell you that he was my mentor as a defense attorney representing police officers. I can also tell you that he started way back, I believe, when Daryl Munger got a hold of him to get into police administrative disciplinary type cases. And how did that happen?
So we met over the FI caper with LAPD, so the field identification card case that happened. A scandal. Oof. That turned out to be a big nothing in the end. Yeah. I represented one of the police officers criminally, and Bill represented him on the admin, and so that's how I met Bill, and that's how we came to know each other.
And he hired you, and I got,
and the rest is history.
The rest is history. 2 thumbs up for the heart. Look, I got to ask you a question, and I'll be a little candid about it, is who are we to hold accountable for this field interview, a.k.a. FI, scandal, that has taken so long?
I would say internal affairs.
Now, but at some point, it is the criminal proceedings.
Yes.
So it could be our justice system. Just what, continuation after continuation after continuation, or?
Well, I think with that case in particular, people hear about cases getting continued and continued, and they think it's just specious or some sort of manipulation of the system. Mm-hmm. But I can't even remember how many people were charged in that case. There was quite a number of people charged, and then they grouped them together in different ways. Okay. And so you had like 5 people grouped over here, and 3 people grouped over here, and 2 people grouped over here. And so you've got to coordinate just practically the schedules of 10 people 6 people, 4 people, to get them all in a courtroom at the same time to do a hearing. And so it kind of the way it goes is it's going to get continued.
Is there any other way of doing it, do you think? I mean, having to reflect.
I don't think there's any other way to do it with your Sixth Amendment right to the counsel of your choosing, right? And so you've got that right to your attorney that you want to use. And if your attorney's busy, your attorney's busy, and that's kind of how it goes.
I mean, deep down inside, it just kind of irks me to know that it's been like 4 or 5 years. I mean, 2018. And here we are in 2024, and we're almost at the end. You know, like one of our guests who was here that adjudicated the administrative portion of the SFI scandal, you know, made it unfounded. And, you know, the next levels of review probably didn't feel like it should have been unfounded. And so there was, you know, a little tension here and there. But, you know, he said, I'm going to make it unfounded at my level, and you're more than welcome to change it at your level, which is what we call a military endorsement. And that took like 2 or 3 years to do. And, you know, and again, I suppose I'm speaking more from, because you defend cops, and, you know, my defense hat is, I suppose, more, I wouldn't say important, but I feel it more because you wait for so long, and the process and the way you're treated just totally sucks for that accused employee, knowing that they have to go to their families, and I don't even know what they say. You know, hey, we're waiting. Maybe they don't tell them. You know, and it's just it's a little bit of heartbreaking.
It's super heartbreaking. I've seen so many clients just negatively affected by being left waiting for years to see what their status is going to be. And especially when someone's like the sole breadwinner or the main provider for their family, they're relieved of duty without pay, people lose their houses, people lose everything sometimes waiting for an investigation to be done.
Yeah. And to this very day, and this is just my opinion, I don't think we prepare an officer who has been exonerated. That would be the scenario that I'm talking about, where I'm back to work, and you know, how do I reintegrate knowing that you put me through all this and I didn't do anything wrong, I've been exonerated, and you know, how to reintegrate an officer. And I don't think we...
No, it's just come back to work on Monday.
It's log on and...
After you've been off for 4 years and you're rusty and you've been through it, and the negative feelings that are going on and the worry and the heartache that it's caused, and then it's just, okay, be back, here's your shift, be back, just be ready.
Yeah. Senate Bill 2, let's move on to that, because I was going to wait until the end, but I don't want to forget, because it's so important.
So important.
Not many people know about it. Me and my partner, James Tacchini, in Savage Training Group, we try to do a decent job. Well, we tell the class, hey, don't kill the messenger. And
everyone gets mad when I teach too, because
don't you feel
have
like
negative stuff to say sometimes. It's a downer, and
right,
it's
but
hard to deliver.
And don't you sometimes feel like maybe you'll tell the class, like, hey, listen, it's kind of hard to instruct and tell you, you know, do's and don'ts and how you should do this, when you don't even know the outcome. You don't. As a matter of fact, just when we get into it, the first advisory board just happened a couple of weeks ago, that we've been waiting since it took into effect 2023, but here we are a year and a half later, and the first advisory board convened, and we still don't know how this is all going to work out. So let's get some basics out. What do you think officers need to know about Senate Bill 2?
So I think the first thing is officers just need to know that Senate Bill 2 exists, which I'm finding a lot of officers don't know about it. So basically what SB 2 does is it professionalizes being in law enforcement, and it allows the state of California, through post, they can take away your post certificate. So in the same way that I'm licensed through the state of California to be an attorney, and if I were to do something improper, they could suspend my license or revoke it.
Yes.
That's the same thing for peace officers now under SB 2. And, you know, California is a little behind the times in catching up with that. That's something that I think 34 other states have had. They have the National Decertification Index, which shows if people have been decertified in their state. And so now California is having to comport with that as well.
Yeah. That's for starters.
That's just for starters. That's the first little taste of it.
Then we have what we call the 9 deadly sins.
Yes.
And that's the serious misconduct defined. We're not going to go through all 9, but I can tell you that one of them is dishonesty, which is, spot on. We can agree that if you get a client who is being charged or alleged with dishonesty, a false statement, the department better have some really good evidence to prove that they were actually dishonest. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, since we're on the topic of dishonesty. In your experience, what's that kind of been like where, an officer gets alleged with this type of an allegation and, in your experience, how has the department presented itself to say, this is what we're charging them? What kind of factual basis do they have for it, or what evidence?
The most common permeation I see with this is false and misleading statements when it comes to criminal allegations. So if someone has contact with the police and they're a peace officer themselves and they give over information to the police, that's the most common place I see that they said, oh, you gave false and misleading information to the police. And it's super hard to prove, right?
Right.
Like the famous one is people who are DUI, I had 2 drinks. Everybody says that, right?
Yes.
Or if you're so blotto that you didn't know that you were fibbing about your drinks, or not even fibbing, you just don't know what your drinks were, right?
Yeah.
How do you prove that that's false and misleading? A lot of that, it seems to be something that departments tack on to try to bolster maybe not the strongest case. If they don't have the strongest IA case, they'll tack on a false and misleading on top of that to try to really get the person.
True. And it's either a false or it's either a misleading.
Yes.
And I can tell you, LAPD, and I tip my hat off to them to have somewhat of a definition that you can kind of go by. Okay, I can see department, where you're alleging, but I know in my experience being an advocate, when I was told, Marlon, this is not a prosecutorial role. Don't think of it that way. You know what? I call BS. It is.
It is. You have a burden
I'm
of
a
proof.
prosecuting attorney on behalf of a glorified one, unlicensed if that, on behalf of the chief of police to say that that accused employee, here we have the evidence to prove that once we're all said and done, to find him guilty. And
that's crazy. That's crazy. What people don't realize about a board of rights is that it's been advocates who are police officers who are then tasked to do the role of an attorney without legal training. And like I said to you, that would be like if you asked me to go do a traffic stop right now and handed me a badge and a gun. I am in no way qualified to do that. And just if you just sent me out there, I don't know what would happen. So it's really cool that you did that without having that training. Just get, trial by fire, quite literally trial by fire.
Your partner, what I consider my field training officer, Bill Secchi, guided me and directed me in such a way that I learned so much. And I was in law school at the time, so it was kind of like, here's moot court, here's trial advocacy. Cool. So
yeah.
I got to learn so much, and he was so nice and kind.
He was gentle.
He was very, very gentle, in a sense that, rules of evidence can apply. You can make it very technical, but then again, let's keep in mind that this is a tribunal hearing. And we're just kind of going to go with the flow about, what's the good old saying? Well, we'll go ahead and we'll introduce it and we'll give it its proper weight.
Yes.
Is what I always
The proper
heard.
weight.
The proper weight syndrome, theory, I should say. Yeah, just go ahead and we'll give it its proper weight and we'll huddle up and, deliberate and say, yeah, well overruled or, whatever. But a lot of experience in this type of setting. I always found that, and again, I'll leave the dishonesty as it relates to SB2, where sometimes I just found like we needed more than just preponderance. I mean, the burden of proof is 51% more likely than not, but I always felt, not just me, actually, the board members felt like, you know what, you better crank that up to like 90. And it better be like, department, you better have some serious evidence, not just Marlon and the partner, or maybe the witness. And by the way, that didn't come in, to testify. It better be more than that. And so those are the little misconceptions that people don't know where this hearing goes down, where we're trying to make sure that if we are going to do this hearing where you're facing termination and you're going to lose it all, it's pretty serious for them. I mean, has that been your experience?
Yeah, it's gotta be, right? It's gotta be. And I've always thought that too. When I first started doing this practice area, learning that it's preponderance of an evidence, which means, like 51%, we think you did it. That shocked me, because you're talking about taking away someone's livelihood, their property interest, and their job, their breadwinner status.
Yeah.
And to take that away when you think just maybe they did it a little bit more than they didn't do it is kind of wild to me. I agree with you. I've always thought it should be more of like a clear and convincing standard, something a little bit higher.
Let's crank that bad boy
crank it
up.
Let's
crank it up.
Crank it up to 90.
90. Let's get to 90 and make it happen. 9 deadly sins, that's one look. We're not going to go through all of them. I can tell you can, chime in and let's see, there's affiliation of gangs or sexual assault, which, by the way, 837.2 kind of defines what it is. Believe me, it's not what you think it is. It's way more than what it is.
Yes. Bad search.
What else? Of course, excessive force, that's one of them. OIS, of course.
Civil judgments now, too.
Yeah, and civil judgments, right? Not many people know this, but in the city of Los Angeles, if you file a claim for damage for excessive force, that's an automatic internal affairs. I come to find out in Northern California, some agencies, they'll take a look at it, but it's not an automatic IA, which
you know what? That's something that's been interesting to me too, because I started practicing in Northern California, and then I'm from LA. I moved back to LA after 2 years of practicing in the Bay Area, and things are done so widely different throughout the state of California.
I love Northern California. They actually have an inquiry process.
Yes, they
where,
do.
You'll come in and make all these allegations. You know what, Mr. Johnson's, give us about 48 hours and we'll look right into it. And if they just happen to be completely frivolous, have a nice day. But not LAPD, unfortunately. You just got to cut a face and you have to go through this IA process.
I know, which is wild to me. Even if you can see from the body worn video that it's clearly false, it's not being dispoed off the video. It's going through the process.
Yes, and let's, put things in perspective. It's the process. LAPD, luckily, and it's a good thing that they have a demonstrably false policy. They actually have a definition, which is great. You should have that. And believe it or not many agencies do have that. It's what I come to find out in teaching. Look, if you're an agency out there that doesn't have it, I know what you're going to say. Well, we're going to Lexipol. Yeah, everybody has Lexipol. Look, I spent 1 year at Cal State University in campus policing, and I took a look at Lexipol. They don't have one as it relates to a demonstrably false. It's a good thing to have. That way you have something to go by. But my complaint and my rant is, even if you have one with my beloved LAPD, the process still takes like 2 or 3 months for you to be cleared. And here you are.
And that'd be fast.
And that's like fast. And then you're driving into work thinking to yourself, oh my God, it's,
Is the sky falling on me?
Yeah. Am I really... Is it going to happen? Am I going to be exonerated? Is it going to be a DF, type of adjudication? So, but you know what? We're getting better. Nothing's perfect. We're getting better. Before we leave SB2, anything we can share to the audience that we can, how do we roll this out and what do we do?
So I think a big thing that I've been telling clients about with SB2 is, if you don't know what it is, please read about it. Post actually has a lot of good resources on their YouTube channel to read and learn more about what SB2 is and when it applies. Yeah. But the biggest thing I'm telling officers and deputies for practical matter is check and see if your union has SB2 coverage. Because if you go through that hearing process, the hearings are all in Sacramento. And if you don't have coverage for that, you could be trying to pay out of pocket for an attorney to fight to keep your livelihood, and you might not have that kind of money. A lot of us don't. And so making sure that they have SB2 coverage. And then a lot of agencies aren't telling their people that they've had to report it to Post. So people are getting these letters from Post in the mail, and they're freaked out. And just know, if you have a civil judgment that's coming towards you, you're getting this letter. If you were accused of doing an unlawful search, you're getting this letter. If you were accused of dishonesty, you're getting this letter. And it doesn't matter how specious the claim may be, you're still getting this letter. And it's not because your agency hates you. It's because they're required to disclose that to Post, and Post has to do either their own investigation or follow your agency's investigation.
Working in silos sucks. When you have a big machine, you would think that you would call or send an email saying, hey, we sent this incident, the CF number, right, your complaint file number, to Post, and you should be hearing from them in the near future, or something along those lines.
You'd like a heads up on that sort of thing before you get the nasty gram in the mail from Post.
Yeah, and it's happened. It's happened where they get it and they say, oh my God, I didn't even know this was in process.
Yes.
Okay, IA story. You got plenty. I know we talked before. You're
Yes.
like, Marlon, I got so many. Give me one from your lens where there's some really good takeaways that people would like to know.
Sure. I have one that comes to mind, which is the importance of wearing body-worn camera. So I had a couple clients who were on a foot pursuit with a bad guy who was wanted for armed robbery.
Okay.
And they're chasing after the bad guy, and bad guy runs into a hotel room. They don't know if that's his room or somebody else's room, and they follow him. And they were accused of booting the door illegally by their department and then falsifying their report. And when I watched the body-worn camera footage, what you can see is the bad guy almost slams the door in the officer's face as they're in the heat of this foot pursuit, and the officer trips and falls and breaks the door. And so the body-worn video in that case completely exonerated them of all the accusations that were being made towards them. And so as much as body-worn is invasive and can be a hassle and has its drawbacks, I think the biggest takeaway I say for officers is use that body-worn camera to your advantage. I mean, it's also there to protect you, not only from citizen complaints, but that was an internal complaint.
Yes, which my takeaway is when you're an IO,
watch the body-worn.
I know it sounds simple, which probably did happen, but you know what? Scrub it.
Yes.
Watch it 10 times if you have to. You know what? I mean, that mantra, no stone goes unturned. It's not that no stone went unturned in this case. Yes. You know, these are your ethics. You know, it goes to what we were talking about earlier about sometimes the mindset, right? The little of the bias.
Getting a little too hot to trot on a case.
Or you probably knew him. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a little heavy-handed. I bet he did it.
Used to work with him. Or
he's a cowboy.
He's a cowboy. He's badge heavy. Know him. My partners have told me about him. And so what ends up happening is that, you end up cutting corners, and you know what? You shouldn't be in this type of function if that's the case. I would imagine in this particular incident, you know what? Just do a little bit more. And here's the deal. It wasn't just one level of review. Could have been a couple. I mean, was it just the IO, or did it get to certain levels and just no one caught it?
It was through command staff generated this complaint without watching the video.
Wow. Now, your client in this incident that you're telling us about, what was it like? What was he feeling? Or, can you share, what was his thinking, or how did he feel? Or
I think that's a super stressful accusation to have, which is falsifying a report, because that's also a crime. It's not just an admin. There's criminal exposure on that.
Right.
So that's a really heavy allegation. Like, you could lose it all. So I can't imagine the stress level of having that hanging over your head of, I could lose my job, I could get charged criminally, I could lose my certification, I could lose it all. And that's like what you're talking about when people are waiting and waiting and waiting with this piano hanging over their head. It's an awful thing.
Yeah, no, one of the guests said it best. He said, Marlon, you know what? The penalty, I'm sorry, the punishment's not the penalty. The punishment is the process.
That's a really good way to put it.
And we're trying to get better.
Many people I see are actually relieved when they get the penalty because it's final. It's over. It's over in a way. And they know what's happened now as opposed to waiting, dreading what it's going to be.
And at times it's right. Now, look, we're not sitting here. I don't want this to make, give the impression that we're having this bashing session like internal affairs is so bad. I'm an IA alumni. I'm here to tell you that we get it right. I think you can agree to that.
There's definitely times someone's got to go or someone has done something that they seriously need to be disciplined for.
Yes.
That's why it's so important to the integrity of a department, definitely.
Right. I think I can speak for you where you've had clients where they've had a sustained complaint and they know there's going to be a penalty. Right.
Yes.
And the department gets it right sometimes. Right. More often than not. I can agree with that. But it's getting there.
It's the getting. It's not the having, it's the getting.
Yeah. No, you know what? We're going to get better. I feel it. I know it. I have faith.
With this podcast, you're going to do it.
Yes. You know what? It's pretty bold, right? Internal affairs. Someone asked me, why so bold, Marlon? You know what? Clarity wins. It's what's for. I've come to realize since I've been retired almost 2 years, and I started going on these guest appearances on all these police podcasts, this is an untapped subject.
It totally is because it's the mysterious one, right? It happens behind closed doors. It's taboo. People don't want to come out and say they were in internal affairs for the reasons that you're saying, the stigma, all the names that you get called and everything else. And I think you're totally right. It's totally untapped.
Yeah. Well, here we are. That's what we have it. And it's been good. I can share so much success that we're having, and the way I describe it, it's rich in content. Having guests like yourselves and many guests that bring different lenses and different angles. Let's get to the next segment, worst and best. You got to give me worst case you ever worked on.
Ooh, worst case I worked on. How are we quantifying worst?
Well, that's interesting.
Is it the worst thing someone did? Is it the worst thing that I've seen? Is it the worst thing for the client?
I would say, why don't we go with worst, meaning, you know what, Marlon, this case that I worked on was, the incident itself was horrible, and, the outcome is the outcome. If you can think of one.
Let me think. I think that it's always disappointing to the public when officers have criminal charges, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of what I do is this criminal crossover. So I defend cops who have criminal allegations before them. And there are cops that I've had that I've gotten them exonerated, acquitted on a case, and others haven't been as fortunate. But I think when an officer's involved in any sort of off-duty criminal conduct, that we can't say, you know what, it was force and they were in a split second using their judgment in the moment, when it's different when we see them in their personal lives doing something like domestic violence. I think that one is always a tough pill for anybody to swallow. Is any case that involves domestic violence is really tough. I just tried a domestic violence case and with success. But listening to the jurors talk about their views on domestic violence was really, really illuminating, because so many people said right off the bat, I can't be fair to that person just because they're accused of it. Just based off the accusation alone, that's where there's smoke, there's fire, and I'm not going to be fair to that person.
They're checked out.
They're checked out. They're checked out. Or that's something that's touched so many people's lives in a way. There were so many people that had witnessed domestic violence or been victims of domestic violence that was really tough. So that allegation is super tough. And the other part that's tough about it is I see a lot of times partners or spouses, they know that domestic violence is something that an officer can be accused of where they're going to lose their career, right? If you get convicted of domestic violence, you lose your firearm. If you get a restraining order, you lose your firearm, and then you're going to lose your job. And so I've seen partners, whether that they be male or female, use that against peace officers and they'll make up allegations sometimes out of vengeance to try to railroad their careers.
Yeah.
So that I would say that's one that is really taboo, that is always tough. It's always a tough sell.
Definitely, probably the worst predicament to put a police officer through a domestic violence, and for the sake of this example, let's just say criminal proceedings are taken care of, charges were dropped, and here comes the admin.
Yes.
And now we have to backtrack, or we have to kind of change our story because I know that my husband or my spouse, right, is going to lose it all, or has the potential losing it all. And those are tough. I've had a couple where I can tell you, just in my experience, no one wants to judge or scrutinize an officer, in what happens in their bedroom. Mm-hmm. That is tough, because how are you supposed to discipline a sworn accused employee, but they have stuff going on at home, but yet at work they're a high performer?
And the thing that people don't realize too is, even if I'm successful across the board with getting someone acquitted on a criminal case or getting charges dismissed, that standard of proof is different. That's beyond a reasonable doubt, right?
Yes.
So then that person, even if I get 12 people to acquit them and say they're innocent,
Yeah.
they could still be fired by their administration, because that's a preponderance of the evidence standard. So just 51%, we think you did it.
Yeah.
You're out the door.
Yeah. And then that allegation, which I just found kind of, I don't know how serious it is, but you can relate to this. That one allegation, on or about such and such date, you caused the police to respond. Okay.
You could cause the police to respond for an innocent reason. I got in a car accident. I'm calling the police to respond.
I always looked at the charge sheet. I'm like, okay, this is a charge, but what's so bad? What is so bad
about having the police respond?
Yeah, they responded.
Sometimes you need the police.
Yes. Now, the police respond and you did something stupid, or, I don't know, got into a fight with the police, or you were obstructing their investigation. Okay, I get it.
Yes.
But that one charge, causing the police to respond. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're totally right. I've thought the same thing. I'm like, what if they genuinely need the police? How can you get them?
Like, when you first saw the charge, you're thinking to yourself, well, what's,
what does that mean?
You're not the only one. The advocate thinks that way, and I'm sure the board members probably think the same way. Like, okay, this is great. This is an allegation, but what are we supposed to do with this? Yeah, sorry. It was a little humor that I had to add to my advocate days back in my border rights days. Thank you for sharing that. Look, let's get the best. When I say best, just give me, let's go with your clients. I don't know. It can be, a case that you were very proud of. It can be, in your journey. You got involved in this. I don't know. You tell me. What do you think it's best for you? Achievement, rewarding, something along that type.
I have two that are my best. One that's the silliest, and so it's my favorite.
Okay.
So the silly one is, it was a citizen complaint. Someone actually complained that an officer stepped on their sandwich, and that paper was cut on that. So
there was an internal affairs investigation.
There was an internal affairs investigation over a sandwich. And so that's probably my favorite silly one. And then my favorite serious case that I've worked on was a case that went to trial in 2021. It was the first officer who'd been charged in 20 years in LA County for an officer-involved shooting. And, that shooting happened in 2016. Mm-hmm. The case didn't go to trial until 2021. And then the admin had to be adjudicated after that. Yeah. And in that case, we got a acquittal within 6 hours from a downtown LA jury. And the jury, came back with the right results. And I can't tell you how scary that is, waiting for a verdict like that when you know the person is innocent. waiting for the verdict to come back and sitting there with your client, waiting to hear their fate be read by a jury, and then to have it come back as innocent. And so the picture that ran in the LA Times from that is a picture of me crying on the client after that happened, because there's just so much emotion that goes into it. And I wasn't the one sitting in the hot seat, and I couldn't help it. I just burst into tears as soon as that acquittal came out. I can't imagine being the person who's at issue, wondering whether you're going to go to state prison, what's going to happen, you know, am I going to leave my family, all of those things. So I would say that's the one that I'm most proud of. Is that acquittal. I'm very proud of that acquittal.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Would it be fair for me to say, because I've been saying this quite often lately, here's my quote: "You're one incident away from getting criminally filed on."
Yes.
Today.
I would say that with the politics that are going on right now, especially with Gascon in office, he's very much made it his charge to go after cops, and you know, he's doing so even on cases where they had been originally cleared and then filing, and it's awful. It's a scary thing. We're asking people to go out and risk their lives, and at the same time, we're asking them to risk their freedom too.
Yes, you can end up in an orange suit and lose it all.
For just trying to help, really. I mean, you know, I think there's obviously bad apples out there and people who do rotten things, but I would say that 99% of cops that start their day every day, they don't plan on getting into a use of force or an OIS or anything like that. They don't want to hurt anyone, but these things happen. And then the scary thing is that you're going to be Monday morning quarterbacked and picked apart by the district attorney's office, and that they could file on you when all you were trying to do was your job and protect your community.
Yeah, Nicole, that's so spot on. I often think about how scary it is to know, especially when you make this decision. What's the average OIS? I think it's less than 2 seconds. And here you're thinking, right, is you're doing everything right.
Yes.
By what you were taught, you know, and this happens, and then next thing you know, you're facing criminal charges, and that's such a heavy burden.
It's a heavy burden. These force incidents are hard on the person who used the force too. They're tragic for everybody all the way around. And that's something I don't think people realize a lot, is having rolled out to these critical incidents over the years. You know, I see someone right after they've been involved in one. I'm there to represent them, and seeing how that weighs on somebody and the toll that takes just in the aftermath of it. And then that can go on for years, for forever. They're holding on to this. It's really tough.
It's super, super tough. I thank you so much for sharing all that. You know, you and I can have conversations about this. We kind of nibbled a little bit on SB2. We haven't even talked about SB26, a duty to intercede, which is one of the 9 deadly sins.
Yes, that is one of the, yes, you remembered.
The light bulb hit. And there's just a lot. Only to say it from my lens that, you know what, you got to know this stuff. Play by the rules. Rules are constantly changing, and you know what? We just don't train. We don't train enough. We don't seek enough training. But you know, it's kind of like, and maybe you can agree to this. The formula is a little bit like a recipe for disaster, because we're asking you to work. I mean, there's agencies, you know this, that are mandated overtime.
Oh,
some agencies are saying you need to work overtime. There's an agency out there, I'm not going to mention names, but they said you can work double. We'll pay you double the money to work overtime. And I heard they even went triple because they're just so short. So here's the deal. If you know, I don't know, if you're some young kid that wants to make money and buy your boat and have all these, you know, you live with mom and dad and you're like, oh yeah, man, I'm just racking in making hundreds of thousands of dollars. But here you are 6-7 days a week. Where do you find time to know SB2? Where do you find time to get to know 3300, POBAR, SB20? So much. We haven't even talked about AB 392 and 835 APC, which I believe is like the Bible. These are things that you need to know. And you know what? We should hold not just the officer accountable, we should hold everybody accountable for not having to teach or train our officers. What do you think?
I think that the mandatory overtime is wild to me. It's wild about how much I'm hearing from different agencies that are understaffed, how they're being forced to do overtime. And I think that it would be interesting to see the data between when people are forced to do overtime and when there's critical incidents and when other things happen, traffic accidents, etc.
All that good stuff.
All that good stuff, because you're forcing people where they've had no sleep
Totally.
to make split-second, life-changing decisions, and or they're burnt out, whatever it may be. They're away from their family. Like, there's a reason why people negotiate contracts for certain hours, right? There's a reason why there's an MOU in place that says we're only going to work this many shifts.
Yeah,
and,
no, totally.
You know, I think that I think agencies should be educating their officers a bit more on SB2 and things like that, because that really goes to the health of the agency. If your officers are losing their certificates, then you're losing officers, and agencies are already at chronically low levels.
Yep.
So I think it's in the agency's best interest to teach on some of these things. I get why they don't want to teach on POBAR, maybe.
Yeah, I know.
But
not looking forward to
SB2, they should definitely be teaching their officers about that, because they need to have all their officers be certified.
Well, if you're too busy, which I think you are sometimes, you can have them give me a call, and I can kind of run down a little bit of SB2. I'm getting better at it. We just started, like, I don't know, not even a year ago.
But it's the unknown world too, because no one's gone through the entire enchilada.
Right.
And so, I mean, SB2 went into effect and they didn't have the commissions appointed.
No.
They had no commissions appointed to adjudicate the matters. So it's still the Wild West a little bit with SB2.
Yeah. What we do is we actually divide them into groups, and I have them come up. Say, all right, you got 1, 2, 3, the deadly sins. Go ahead and tell us. And, don't say verbatim. Just kind of tell us what it is and give us an example, and let's talk about it. And you know what? Every time we do that for the classes, I find something new that I didn't think about,
Yes.
But then they're all looking at me like, well, you're the instructor. And I'm sitting there going, hey, don't kill the messenger, because it's a bit of a challenge to tell students that, we kind of don't even know what this is going to be, how it's going to be rolled out.
Yes.
Do you find that?
I find that very challenging when I teach as well. And it's a hard thing to tell people when they get a letter from Post.
Yeah.
That I don't know exactly how this whole thing's going to go, because no one's gone through the entire process
That's
yet.
right.
It's so new.
They're sitting there saying, Miss Castronovo, what do you think?
As I'm commonly called.
And you're like, that's not my last name, but we're okay. Again, we can talk forever. Look, this has been great. I got to have you on again, because we're going to talk some more.
We got a lot to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about. We finally met. I am, happy to know that, you've carried on the torch, of defending cops. I love defending cops. I got all this experience from both sides, and sometimes I am a little bit critical to say that we just need to get better in terms of the department and internal affairs. As an alum, I don't think that there's many who, my partners, my colleagues, who have actually worked internal affairs can disagree with me. I think we can all do better, and that would include command staff as well. There's things that we could have done better as you reflect on your career and how you treated in this whole process. So, parting words. Look, we're getting ready to finish. Look, what do we got? Where do you work? How do we get a hold of you? All that good stuff.
Parting words. Okay, so my parting advice for anyone who's listening to this podcast is, if you find yourself getting an IA notice, immediately call your union and get an attorney. You paid for it. Everybody pays for their legal defense fund coverage. Use it. My other advice is get SB2 coverage, because everybody's going to end up getting a letter from Post eventually at some point. And then where I work at Seki Nishimura in Watase, so I work under the Great Bill Seki, and that's where you can find me if you want to get a hold of me.
That's right.
Our website's www.snw-law.com. And so you can read about all of us on there and read our bios and our contact information. All of that's on there. So if you find yourself in a legal pickle, that's one way you can get a hold of me. I'm also a POR Act panel attorney. So for agencies that are with POR Act, I'm on the panel. If you want to select me, you're more than free to do that as well if someone wants to get a hold of me.
That's right.
And as well with the league. I'm on the panel for the league.
That's right. And my man crush.
With your man crush.
My man crush and I go way back. There was a point in time where I called a lot in the office, and I believe one of the workers, I suppose, alludes to the fact that, you guys are man crushing. And I said, well, that's going to be our nickname.
It's deserved. He's a sharp dresser.
He is.
He's got style.
Yeah, we compare, but I couldn't live up to the Burberry suits, and the guy's just
the socks,
with the initials embroidered. I think the world of him. So,
and
listen,
he's a great mentor. He's a great mentor to me. I'm sure he was a great mentor to you.
You know what? I owe a lot to my knowledge and my experience to Bill, and I know you're going to be watching the episode when he comes in here, and so.
Oh, absolutely!
Yeah.
I got to heckle him and stuff.
Yes, we do. Oh no, you got to give me some good stuff so I can have some fun as we're having our conversation. Nicole, thank you so much for showing up, and we're going to wrap it up. And like always, you know what? Just be safe out there, and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.